Alrighty. Hi guys. I hope everyone is doing well. So, welcome to this very interesting session. And in this session, we're actually going to actually go around and discuss around the first couple of challenges in our 25 days of cybersecurity challenge on TryHack. So working on the 25 days of cybersecurity, and I believe to date, people should be around about day 11 from the point that we started. So we should be sitting around about day 11. So it's going to be going well. So anyhow, um, round about now, we would expect that you guys would all have gone from day one all the way through to the rogue genome. So we're going to go through a somewhat interesting conversation now. So we're going to go through a conversation. We're going to sort of chat all together. We're going to go hand in hand, sort of really see what it is that you guys have gone through in the past. Perhaps maybe some of you guys um, have not yet done it, maybe out of fear. You thought it might be very, very difficult or something like that. So we're going to go ahead and go into a panel discussion, really. We're going to talk about it, see what is it that you guys have gone through, how easy was it, and maybe even go through a bit of a walkthrough altogether so we can actually see how this thing works out. So we're going to go through some solutions as well, sort of get around the thought process, the way of thinking around some of these problems that you guys have gone through in some of these cybersecurity tasks. So when you were getting started, of course, in our day one challenge, the day one challenge was actually based off of cookies. And I'm not exactly sure if you guys are familiar with cookies. Just kind of like this side by side setup. I also like this setup as well. So actually gonna play around with these. But anyways, so ideally, cookies are basically files that are stored in one's computer, ideally. So when you log into a particular website, whether it's Facebook or it's a website for banking or anything like that, when you add or you perform that authentication, the website needs to have some sort of a way to actually remember, right? To actually remember the fact that you actually logged in. So you'd notice that whether it's Facebook or anything like that, the next time you come back, you don't really have to log in. Technically, actually swapped around my camera. But anyways, you'd notice that you don't have to log in. That's because of those cookie values. So it stores those unique cookies on your computer, and next time you visit, it sees that you have the cookie and it lets you in. However, cookies have a problem. Reason being, some web developers tend to create cookies in a very weak-like fashion, or they might even use libraries that are already created. We often hear of web developers creating websites or web applications using technologies such as Node.js or anything along those lines. And some of these end up having very weak systems. So we're going to take a look at that. This is actually what was going on within day one, which was quite a very, very interesting approach, actually. So if you see this, so here in this part, it gave some sort of a bit of an overview of how websites work, domain name services, and so on and so forth. So it gave a bit of an overview of how websites work, how you're able to type into your web browser, tryhackme.com or google.com, but you sort of have a pop-up of that actual website itself, which is how DNS works. But anyways, not really the bread of the bun here, but that's medicine for another disease. But anyways, here then we had a bit of a discussion around HTTPS, Hypertext Transfer Protocol Security, which is a way of you being able to communicate with a website in a secure like fashion such that you don't have people either on the internet or in your Wi-Fi, your home Wi-Fi or anything like that, that are able to listen in on the communication that is happening between you and that particular website itself. So you sort of have that secure like manner and secure like way of communicating. But anyways, that's sort of what HTTPS is. But now you sort of get the idea behind cookies. Now, when it comes to these cookie values that we're talking about here, anyone can read these cookie values. You can read a cookie most likely when you visit a particular website. So I'm actually going to take this. Okay. So I often tell people that, hey, when we're performing cybersecurity, the go-to approach is to always use Firefox because Firefox is great. So we don't use Chrome, we don't use any of those. We actually use Firefox. So Firefox is sort of our go-to web browser because we go to it because it's sort of flexible. It allows us to perform limitless activities, including hacking, which is pretty much what we're going to be doing in this case. I'm going to transfer this over now to um, I'm going to transfer this over to Firefox so we can sort of now go through that entire activity. So there we go. So here is Firefox. I'm going to visit the very same website that we have, which is still Try Hack Me in this context. And in our Try Hack Me website here, we are going to be using Try Hack Me in this case to practice the whole idea of reading cookies values that are saved in your computer. So we're going to load up it. There we go. So here's Try Hack Me. Very easy enough. I'm just going to log into this because obviously you do need to have an account. So I'm going to quickly log into my Try Hack Me account just like that. So I have my password in Proton Pass. There we go. Beautiful. Okay. If you're doing this for the first time, you have to join the room. In my case, I've already done that. So here we go. Here is my attack box with all the tools that I need whatsoever, which is beautiful. Okay. So I'm going to be using this. So I'm going to pop this out just so that I have it in a different screen so it's easier for you guys to see. If I sort of have the side-by-side approach, it might be a bit of a challenge for you to actually see that. So I'm going to sort of have that side-by-side approach. But anyways, here is our day one machine. I've already booted it up. Here's the IP address. Everything is fine. So let's go back here. I'm going to close this off and I'm going to close that. I don't need that. We're going to open up our own Firefox browser here. So now we're going to visit the website that we are given here for testing purposes, right? It's not an actual website. It's not Facebook. It's not APSA. It's not FNB. It's not a banking system. It's rather a low-level website. However, the objective here is to really get around and test how websites really work. In this case, how you can manipulate cookies that are saved in your computer. So here we go. Here's my web browser that I've got saved up here. So I'm going to go ahead and take up this IP address. That's 10.10.113.29. So that's 10.10.113.29. Okay. All I'm doing is visiting the testing website that we are given. So here we go. It's a very simple-ish website. Here it says this is the Christmas Control Center. So the idea behind this particular page is to sort of simulate the idea behind Santa Claus, the fact that, hey, Santa Claus can have control over what happens in the North Pole, I guess, right? He has the ability to turn, I don't know, dwarfs on and off or something. But anyways, the simulation is behind the power of Santa. So anyone can log in here. Anyone who works in the North Pole can log in here. But the power that we really need is the power that Santa Claus has. But anyways, so the rule of thumb here is we're going to work around this website. I'm just going to register a basic account here. So you notice this is a very interesting form here. I'm going to say my name is Nash. And I'm just going to use the password12, okay, for sake of testing. And we can register. You notice that the user has been created successfully. I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing this time, but I'm going to do this to log in. We're going to go ahead and do that and log in. Booyah. This is pretty much how a basic website really works. Didn't exactly do much of fancy stuff, but the problem is now around the cookies. Now, the fact that I've logged into this particular website, this is how the web development works now. Because I've logged into this particular website, it has created a cookie. So if you click anywhere right on there, by the way, this is a Firefox thing. If you click on inspect, you'd get your web developer tools. But there's this storage part. We want to actually see what has been stored. So if you look here under cookies, here is that website itself, you would see this value. So there is the name, which is called auth, and it has this very, very, very long value that was stored there, which is good. But anyways, this is the cookie value. If I was to delete this, then pretty much I am no longer logged in. I've technically logged out. It's sort of an automated way of logging out. But anyway, the objective right now is to use this. Right now, I'm actually logged in as Nash. Notice how it's just showing me whether something is active or not. I don't have the power to turn things on or the power to turn things off. Santa is the one with that power. So I actually need to log in as Santa. However, the objective now is to find a way to manipulate this value such that it ends up showing that I'm logged in as Santa. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is actually double click on there and copy this value. Okay, so this is pretty much the giant value that I've copied. Then we're going to look for an interesting tool called the Cyber Chef. Now, Cyber Chef is a beautiful piece of tool. Now, it's a Swiss Army knife. So what we mean by that being a Swiss Army knife, we're just saying that it's a tool that can do many things. That's ideally what a Swiss Army knife is. So we're going to use Cyber Chef. Reason being that there is Cyber Chef from GitHub pages. So Cyber Chef has different tools for encrypting and decrypting and looking at stuff and how stuff looks like and all that. But our objective right now is to actually dissect. We are actually going to dissect our cookie, right? We're going to take that cookie value. We're going to sort of translate it from a hexadecimal format, right? Because this is actually what we have. So we're going to take it from a hexadecimal format. So I'm going to double click the from hex, right? You could do this. Now I've pasted it on the input, by the way. Notice when we've decoded it, we have decoded it from a hexadecimal format. When we've decoded it, we can actually see how the cookie looks like. So notice it just has the company name, the Best Festival Company, and my username is currently Nash. So this is what is stored inside of my cookie. Now you're probably like, okay, cool. So if this is what is actually stored, what if I manipulate this, translate it back, and save the new cookie? See, now we're getting somewhere. So we can copy this as it is, right? We can copy this, and this time we want to change this string and put it back to hexadecimal format, right? Because remember, this is hexadecimal format, and this is, well, string format, I guess. So we're going to copy this as it is, like that. And then we're going to take CyberChef and look for something to help us to translate string into a hexadecimal format, like that. So we want to now translate this thing into hexadecimal format. So I'm going to close this, turn that off. So here, this is what we had, but this time we actually want to change this part into Santa. Okay, we want to change that part into Santa. By the way, we don't have any delimiters, but anyways, then we can bake this once we're done. So what we're doing now is we're going to take this thing right here, and we are going to now retranslate it. We're going to reform it, form up our own cookie. We've dissected it and we've seen how the cookie looks like. And we're going to continue over to take that very same form. Okay, we're going to take over that very same form, and that very same form, we're going to take it, we're going to dissect it, and now that we see how it looks like, we sort of get a feel of how it looks like. Now we can take that form. We're going to change it up to the way we want it to, right? I guess day one. We're going to take it to the way we want it to. We make the necessary changes, get a new cookie, save it in our browser in this case, right? We're going to save it into our browser, and once we have it into our browser, then we can see if it's just gonna pretty much log us straight in. Okay, so this is sort of the concept and the rule of thumb that we are having here. So this is what we have, isn't it? So we're going to take this, and now we sort of trying to now translate the string into a hexadecimal format. This is the idea now. So there's many tools, rapid tables, whatever, different kinds of tools. You can still work around using our tool here. Actually, I have to pause that, but there we go. Here's our new one. I didn't turn it off. That's why we had that looking like that. But anyways, here. So it was Nash before because I was actually logged in as Nash. It looked like that. If you wanted to use rapid tables, you can happily do that. You still pretty much get the very same thing, make the conversion, there we go, you have the same thing. But anyways, make sure, by the way, that the delimiter is none. If you have space, it looks like that, kind of how rapid tables looks like. So just make sure that the delimiter is set to none, so there's no spaces in between. Once you're done, you can copy this. So this is now a new cookie that has Santa as the logged in username. So Santa is now the person who we are going to log in as. So we're going to log in as Uncle Santa. So how exactly do we log in as Uncle Santa? We're going to grab that new cookie value. We're going to go in back to our platform there. I'm going to take this to my clipboard so I can paste it in there. Okay. So now that we are in here, clear that out, paste that in there, save that. Now that it's saved, we can go ahead and refresh that. Voila. Now you'd notice a lot more superpowers. Got a lot of strength I can work with now. So there's more power this time. However, due to me having this new strength, notice now I can turn things on and turn things off because I'm actually logged in as Uncle Santa himself. I've got control and power to do a lot of these functionalities, and I'm able to obtain the flag. Now, this is what we were actually working on in day one, which is all around manipulating and working around with the cookie values and so on and so forth. Okay, hope that sort of was sort of like a very easy and nifty approach around web applications. But then again, these issues are normally done by web developers themselves. Perhaps maybe they've implemented weak procedures, they've done anything along those lines, hence we have those particular manners. And then of course we had day two. Now day two was a bit of a different case. Day two was actually around what we call let me see if I remember this very well. Yes, this was based off of listeners, shell listeners. A listener is basically sort of an exploit that makes an infected host to connect to you, right? We've got a forward listener and a reverse listeners. We've got a whole lot of these different kinds. So the idea behind here was to sort of find a web application or a website in a sense that was weak to these vulnerabilities. So I'm going to actually terminate this one here, terminate that. So this is around websites that have an upload functionality, meaning some sort of website where you can upload a particular file. And on that website, once you have uploaded this particular file, this website doesn't really scan some of these files or anything like that. They just work with the file. So you can actually upload up a file that you've whipped out and installed a listener. And once you've opened this file inside of this particular website, it would cause the website to connect to you, and voila, you've got yourself a terminal and you can pretty much control the website itself, which is pretty great. So this is the whole idea behind it. It's all about file uploads. Now it's worth noting that when you upload files in some particular website, it has to save the file somewhere. That's the rule of thumb. It has to save that file somewhere, some sort of a place. Some common places are a folder called uploads, images, media, resources. They normally saved there. So you can sort of jump around and say /images and jump your way through to sort of access that particular file, if I'm sort of making sense. Actually rejoin this. Okay, so this is sort of the somewhat rule of thumb around them anyways. So with them in this manner, we can upload these, make our way through to these folders and open those files. So we'll work around how to create reverse listeners. That's one thing. I don't really say it's that important to know how to create a reverse listener, but it's a great skill to have, to know how to create a reverse listener. For the sake of simplicity in this case, I'm going to show you how to just get a template of reverse listeners. If you're a web developer, you've worked with programming languages like PHP before, this process is actually a whole lot simpler if you think about it. But anyhow, we're going to be working around that particular task. So this is day two. We can hook up this particular machine, by the way. So here we go. We have a machine here that we're going to boot up, and we're going to work around with that particular machine. It has its own website. For the sake of testing and teaching you the whole concept behind listeners and so on and so forth, the website has a functionality for you to upload. So we're going to maneuver around the upload a piece of file that is terrible. Okay, we're going to upload it there, and we're going to work with it like that. And we're going to hook up something very interesting called Netcat. No, Netcat is just a networking tool in this case, but we're going to use Netcat to start up what is called a listener. A listener is actually what the word says. It's a listener. It's basically a state where your computer stops and just listens to someone who's going to connect to it. And this is why the listener that you uploaded into the website comes in handy, because it is going to try to connect to you. So that's the idea. So it's sort of a hacking way, but you're sort of letting it hack you, if that sort of makes sense. So if we put it all together, we need to find a point where we can upload some sort of a file. We're going to try to upload an innocent file of some sort. Then we'll use that to find wherever it stores it. Then we'll bypass the filters, right? In some cases, uploads could allow you to upload any file, could allow you to upload pictures, apps, anything. there. Then we're going to start up our Netcat, and then we're going to navigate into our shell browser and receive a connection. This is sort of the rule of thumb and the approach that we're going to be taking for this particular task. So here we go. I'm going to close CyberChef. We won't be needing it for this. So that's 10, 10, 205, 104. So that's what we have here. So that's 10.10.205.104. I think it was. There we go. Beautiful. It says you are not signed in. Please enter your ID as a parameter. Yeah, beautiful. This is something that happens in websites, by the way. Parameters sort of change the way a certain website works. So here, for the sake of testing, they've already created a parameter for us. In this case, they've mentioned a parameter for us to use. They said here, you have been assigned an ID number for your audit on the system, which is this one. So they're saying use your personal ID. So it's sort of like a way of authentication, if you will. But anyways, so you need to set your ID. So question mark ID is equal to, and you place in your ID in there. So I'm sort of gonna have to go back and copy out this ID, and I'm gonna transfer it right on in there. So there we go. I'm transferring my ID, so I'm setting it as a get parameter. Beautiful. Okay, so now that we are in here we go. It's an upload functionality. You select a file, right? Just like that. And here's your browser. You can pretty much look for a file to upload. Now, in this part, there are many files that one can upload, documents. I don't know if I have any files that I could work with. Do I have any pictures? Yes, I do. Try hack me's or whatever's. There's a lot of files that I can work around. PNG, can I submit it? Yes, I can. Ah, nice. Okay. But now the question is, where does it store the files? So let's try and figure that out. So 10.10 point, let me see if I remember it. Yes, this was the website. This was it. So we'll try and see, are the files located at uploads? Maybe. Ah, there it is. There's the file that I've just uploaded. It's exposed. Pretty sucks. But anyways, so you can actually see that this is the file that we've just uploaded. And it's pretty much sitting right there. This was the file that I've uploaded. But anywho, so now we sort of get the idea that, hey, it does upload files. So now what do we need to do is to create a reverse shell. So we're going to create some shell code, right? We're going to create a script that will perform a reverse connection to us. That's ideally the approach that we're going to be taking for this. So when it comes to this part, you don't really have to know programming, as I've mentioned. When it comes to the reverse shell, you don't have to know much of programming or anything like that. There are different websites, if you will. There's different websites that you could go to actually get a template for a reverse shell. I'm going to show you a couple of them, um, But it's worth noting that some of these websites, even visiting them, would trigger antiviruses, by the way. Antiviruses really, really test on pen test monkey. It's a GitHub repository. But anyways, here we've got ourselves a reverse shell, right? You don't have to understand the code, but we can pretty much see the parts we need to replace that actually say change this, right? You have that. You can make the necessary changes to those codes. Okay. But remember, as we've mentioned as well, you've got a reverse shell located here as well. You've also got the pentest monkey. You see, there is the link, similar to the very same page that I've opened. Okay, you've been given a template, which is this one. So you could work around it like that. So fair enough. What we're going to do is take all the source code that we have here, write it down in PHP, try and upload it there, and perhaps open it from that page and see if it works. So I'm going to go around and copy everything that we have here. I'm going to transfer it over to my attack box, right? Put it over like that. Okay. Now I'm going to open up my terminal here. Okay. So here's my terminal, nothing fancy. Okay. I'm going to use nano to write this down. So this is a PHP. Notice this is PHP code, right? So I'm going to call this reverse shell.php. Okay, I'm just going to say nano reverse shell.php. Let me actually max this out for you guys to see this. Okay, and then we just paste all of the code that we had before in here. So this is what we had. In fact, this is what we just got from that particular template. It's full of comments and a whole lot of stuff. But anyways, we only need to change two things, the port and the IP. We just need to change these two guys here, right? Now you're probably asking, what are those two things? Now the IP that we're going to provide here is the IP address where the machine is going to connect to. In this case, it's actually our IP address because we want it to connect to us. And the port number is, well, it's the port number that it's going to connect to us. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to open up a new tab here. Okay. The reason why I'm opening up a new tab is because I want to start up Netcat, which is what I've mentioned here before. This Netcat. Netcat is our listener. So I want to start up the listener first before I do anything else. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and start up my listener by saying nc-lvnp. And then you're going to give a port number. Maybe I would like to use port 441 for what it's worth. It's up to you. Okay. And you just hit enter and you leave it like that. You notice that it's listening. It's just waiting. It's waiting for someone out there to connect to it. Someone out there. And we are going to force that website to open this script. And this script, its job is to actually connect to that particular port. Okay. So let's go ahead and do these now. So what is the IP address? Now, because I'm using the attack box on TryHackMe, it sort of made my job here a lot simpler. My attack box IP address is actually there. So that's 10.10.92.243. Yeah. And then we need a port. Take note that the port number that you provide here has to match the port number that you gave in your Netcat listener. I've used port 441, so I have to use port 441 in this case. Then once you're done, that's pretty much all you have to do. Then we're going to use Control X, Y, and enter, and that's going to save it. So if we use ls, you would notice there is our reverse shell.php file. Pretty decent. Now it's a matter of uploading this file to our website. So I'm going to minimize this. Okay. So here's our little submit there. We do a little select. I'm going to go home and it's probably somewhere here, but you've noticed that it doesn't actually show that. It says all supported types. I'm going to try and make this all files, but notice when I say this, it shows these JPGs, JPEGs, and PNGs, and so on and so forth. So clearly these look like viable files that the website is expecting you to upload. It expects you to upload images. Now the question is, will it accept if we try to upload a PHP file? That's the question. So let's try and submit that. Nope, that's an invalid extension. It doesn't allow that, unfortunately. So we've sort of hit a train smash in this context. So we have to now figure out a really, really, really smart way to change the file extension in some sort of a way. In the end, it should end up accepting it. So we're going to go around and change that. So I'm going to take my terminal once more, like that. Okay, so what we have is a PHP file. So I'm going to rename it by saying mv reverse shell reverse dash shell dot php. I'm going to rename it to become a new file called reverse dash shell dot php, but not just a normal dot php this time. There's actually going to be a dot jpg in front of that, right? So it should start thinking that, hey, this is clearly a picture. So wait, it's not really a picture, really, but we're trying to make it think that it's a picture, right? So there we go. I've sort of renamed it to have .jpg in the name of the file. Maybe this would manipulate the file upload to accepting my file type. Okay, so I'm going to filter this again, see if we can get some JPGs. We can't really do that. Let's see all files. There it is. It's still a PHP file, but with a touch of JPG. Try and submit that. Ooh, that submitted successfully. So we've manipulated our way around that. So now the question is, what do we do, Nash? Now what we need to do is to open our file that we just uploaded. So here's the uploads I had opened in a separate tab. I'm just gonna refresh this. There's our reverse shell. I'll try and open that. It's just gonna keep loading, I guess. But let's go back to our reverse shell. You'd notice that it has changed. There you go. Linux security server, blah, 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 da, 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 da. Now we're actually in the PC itself. I can browse folders. I can, well, clear well, you can't really clear the terminal because it's not a stable console, but you've pretty much gotten into the system. You've got the power to do a lot of stuff. Where am I? I'm in the home folder. Do you see that? You can now navigate around. You could look for files, which is pretty much the objective that you were given here. What is the flag in this particular folder, in the var www folder? So we can actually go into the var slash www. We could go there, list whatever is there, and hey, there's flag.txt. We can read what is in flag.txt. And there it says you've reached the end of the Advent Cyber Day 2, blah, 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 blah. And you have a flag to submit to prove that you completed that successfully. So this is decent, isn't it? So this is sort of the whole idea behind file uploads. So as a web developer, you need to look out for things like these, especially when you have the file upload functionalities, knowing very well that people are going to upload files that will be open on your platform. You need to be aware of your reverse shells being a possibility. Anyways, then another thing was days that followed quite after that. Some of these were based off of authentication. Remember, authentication is just the process of you logging in. So what we had here was the process. We were learning how to basically crack passwords on websites, basically performing what is called a dictionary attack using a tool called Burp Suite. Now, Burp Suite is a very decent tool, okay? And Burp Suite is something that we're going to be taking a look at now. So I can actually go back on up there and let me actually shut down that machine. We can terminate that. We're done with it. Then let's scroll back down there. So here we go. So here we've got a particular website that we're given here as well. So we're going to be using Burp Suite. Now Burp Suite is a bit of a weird-ish type of a website, and I'll sort of show you how and why this is the case. So let's go ahead and follow that. So we're booting up this machine. It'll take about a minute to do that. So let's walk through. You need to hook up, obviously, your Firefox browser. Then we're going to use this tool called Foxy Proxy. And Foxy Proxy is actually an extension that you add into Firefox. Now, what it does is it's going to proxy in between your browser and the website so that it actually reads what is really happening between the browser and the website, what it's sending and what it's receiving. Reason why is because we want to see what it is we're sending, such as the login. Are we sending usernames and passwords only, or is there something else? Then once we have that, we'll sort of see the fields that we need to guess every time. You might notice that it's just a username and a password that we need to crack, or it might be something else. So Foxy Proxy breaches the gap between those two. We'll notice that maybe it's a username and a password that we need to crack. Then Burp Suite would show us that, and then we can use Burp Suite to send multiple requests to the website, and whichever one is correct, we'll sort of get a response from there. Excuse me. So we're going to go ahead and do exactly that. So there is Foxy Proxy. We'll use that. Foxy Proxy in this case is just a web extension. I'll show you how that looks like in a sec as well. So here's the website that we're going to be testing on. So I'm gonna go back on this. We pretty much done with these guys, I guess. So what I'm gonna do now is hook up Burp Suite. I'm gonna prepare Burp Suite in this case. You might not find it there. You might find it along the applications themselves. I'm gonna go to web, and there's the Burp Suite Community Edition. And then I'm gonna close off that. I don't need these websites anymore. Okay, so while Burp Suite is running up, we've got 10, 10, 31, 136. So that's the website we're gonna be testing on, 10.10.31.136. That's the website we've been given to perform testing on. So here we go, Santa Sleigh Tracker. It's just a sign in. It's just a sign in. Temporary memory, I'm just gonna say next and start Burp Suite. Anyways, so here it just says Santa Sleigh Tracker. There's a login. We have nothing to work with. Maybe we were given usernames and passwords to work around here. Maybe. Burp Suite. Use Burp Suite to brute force the login form. Use the following list in your credentials. Here, this is a list that we're given to test with. We'll do that. But the main objective I need you to get out of this is to how to navigate around Burp Suite. So let's do this. So here's Burp Suite. It looks good. So what we need to do now is to take Foxy Proxy and configure it to work with Burp Suite. So you'd notice when you click on Foxy Proxy, you'd notice that Burp Suite is already there. They've already given us that to work with, so that's easy. So when we get over to our proxy here, there you go. You sort of see it right there. Do you see this? So our interceptor is on. I'm going to drop everything here, sort of clear it out so we have nothing. Then now what's happening is Burp Suite is ready to record everything that is going to happen now. It's going to record whenever you attempt to log in, what it is you send out, what it is you receive in response, and everything in general. So here it is. You could enter anything here. Test me, bra. Nashe is dope. Something like that. So there you go. Whatever you type in there as login details doesn't really matter, honestly. But the rule of thumb really is to get Burp Suite to record that entire request. There you go. There's a post request that was made, and this is what we're really looking for. So there you go. See the username, test me bro, and the password was Nash is dope, which is actually true because I am really dope. But anyways, now that we've captured this, we're going to send this to what is called the intruder. Okay, we're gonna send it to the intruder. The intruder is what does the actual brute force and password cracking and everything inside of Burp Suite. So here's Burp Suite, right? So there's many things that we need to test here. Notice the things in red, the username and the password. These are the things that are crackable in this case that we need to, well, crack, right? So this being a payload, you could use this auto part, right? It's sort of gonna guess everything that needs to be cracked if I'm sort of making sense in this case, okay? So hope that ideally somewhat makes sense in this case. So we need to guess username and we also need to guess the password part of it. So we have sort of two parts to crack. Okay. Then once we're done, now we can give our payload. Okay. So that's the payload. We've given the positions. now we can select the method in which we want to crack. So on this part here, you'd notice under this drop down, there's a couple of them. We've got what is called the sniper, and we've got what is called pitchfork, we've got cluster bombs, and so on and so forth. There's different kinds. We're going to use sniper in this case for simplicity's sake. Okay. And then you're going to select what type of cracking do you want to do. Is it a brute force? Is it numbers? Character breaks? We're going to work with the simple. Now, once you have selected that, then you're going to give your words, right? The things that you would like to test as possible usernames and as possible passwords throughout this entire thing. Okay, this is exactly what is actually happening on this part. So you've selected, you've said sniper, blah, 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 all on up to you anyways. Okay, but when you get to this part, we're now specifying the fact that, hey, I would like to um, I would like to test out these set of usernames for the first payload, and I would like this to work for the second payload, and it will try out those different permutations automatically, if I'm sort of making sense. Okay, if you were to select the brute forcer, I think you might be able to sort of get it right off the bat what is sort of the core difference when you're working with the brute forcer. It's actually going to brute force. It's very different to how it looks like if you were performing a word list. With a word list, you have to explicitly give usernames and passwords and usernames and passwords. But with brute force, you don't really have to do that. You can just tell it that all of them are numbers, and it will try all possibilities of numbers that could work there. All possibilities of numbers would be attempted entirely without exception. So if you sort of get the idea here, a brute force sort of has the highest level of completance, if you want to put it like that, or success. So if I do this with brute force, I have the high level of success, but the question really is all around how long it's gonna take. It will take a whole lot longer if you do it with that. But that's fine anyways, not really a biggie. Okay. But anyhow, we've sent this to the intruder. There's our particular target, and we've selected that we're doing a sniper-based attack against this. You could explore. I always recommend that people explore around some of the different functionalities that you would get out of this. Okay, I'm just gonna clear out these payload positions so we sort of understand what's going on here. So what we have here, this is one of the possible things we can interchange. So you can highlight it and add it as a payload. Then there's another one here. You can highlight it and add a payload. Then you sort of have two payloads now in this case, if I'm sort of making sense. So you have two payloads, and each of those payloads are parts that you can work with. So you've got two payload positions, if I'm making sense. So out of those two payload positions, each of them can bear different values as you are testing each time. They all bear different values. They can have a different username. They can have a different password as you progress through and test out your whole situation. Now, I don't know. I've taken it this side. I can put it that side. Anyways, but that's fine. So as you test these out now, then now you'll get to the point where you need to give your credentials that you would like to work with here. So we can give a rule type, what kind you'd like to give, and da 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 da. Now this depends again on the kind that you are working with. Are we working with a simple password list, or are we working with something else? Now you can paste some, you can edit, you can do these. They are a whole lot different. Okay. Now, these rules that we are having here, it's just explaining how do we want to place or process the values that we are replacing to put on here. Okay, so I'm just going to say okay for this part, and then we can give the different values that are going to be placed onto those particular slots. Okay, then let's work on the payload configuration, which is this drop down. Okay, so there we go. We've got two payloads. So for the first one, it has one, and the other one has the other, and so on and so forth. So now I can give values that I would like to replace. One is admin, other one is, well, I don't know, password, root, and so on, and tour, whatever, we're sort of giving all these different values that we would like to give, right? Now, it's worth noting that the more different values that we keep on adding as of to the payloads, it gets greater and greater and greater. Okay, so our payload in this case is sort of growing in size. Once we have this prepared and it's ready for launching, we can hit to start the attack. Then once this is up and running, then it's going to sort of send these values out and replace and so on and so forth, and we'll get a response out of them. Then from there, we're pretty much ready to go. Now, whichever one works, you'll sort of see comments and error responses coming out. Some of them have an error 302, some have a 401, and so on. Normally, if the usernames and passwords actually work, you'll actually notice a status 200. So it's actually a case of looking for which of these have a code of 200. And whichever one has the code of 200 is the one with the correct password. So the rule of thumb behind these is actually automating the whole process of trying out, in fact, these values that we were given here, trying out a whole lot of these values all together in those particular pairs. In some cases, you can mix and match them all together. But in the end, you end up with the correct username and password. You'd see that using that status 200, and then voila, you'd be able to pretty much tell that, hey, I have found the relevant password or I have not, and so on and so forth. And you can pretty much tell which one is different. Um, However, once you're done, you'd be able to actually log in through and tell which one is correct. But as you do that, we eventually saw that admin and 12345 were correct. Okay, so we sort of mismatched admin and 12345. Those ended up working. Okay, I'm just feeling a bit lazy to add all of those there. But anyways, once you take that, you'd see that admin and 12345 sort of worked out for that. Then you can send those through, but you would have to turn off our dear friend Foxy Proxy. Would have to turn that one off, right? So I'm just gonna disable that again and relaunch it again. It would be able to send you through to capture that particular flag. And voila, you'd be able to go through that particular authentication system. Now, these were pretty much the very first 3 days of the Advent challenge that we had here. Then there were others, and to date, you guys are probably around about day 11. And as you progress through time in our Discord, I will keep on checking up on you guys, making sure that you guys are, of course, catching up to the challenges. So I'm gonna leave those off there. And you guys are doing great, by the way, with the challenges. So I'm gonna leave that off there. And whenever you guys need a hand, I'm always there to assist you. So I'm gonna leave that off there, and I shall see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.